stereotypical intro burnout.
Asbestos. Rob, do you or anyone you know have mesothelioma?
If so, you may be eligible to $1 million lawsuit.
Have you ever drank the water on Fort Hood? Welcome back to Charlie's Corner, and this week I have a new hat. This one's black instead of gross. Supercharged versus turbocharged. What are the pros? What are the cons? What's best for your application? The pros of a supercharger. For one, simplicity. They're a little bit easier to install than a turbo kit, less parts, no oil lines to have to deal with. Typically they're self-oiling. Another thing is the lack of lag. It's going to be a constant boost off idle. And then with that, you have better drivability for a street car, in my opinion, especially at lower RPM, depending on the car. Cons of a supercharger. The biggest one, in my opinion, is going to be the parasitic draw. Say your average street car, making, 500-600 horsepower. The supercharger is going to need about 50 horsepower just to get spun. Now, say your blower makes an extra 150, you're just eating that. So it's kind of a give and take when it comes to a supercharger. The other thing is it makes your engine less efficient. In today's market, efficiency is kind of king. So because it is less efficient, it leads to things like on a roots blower, for instance, you have to deal with things like heat. The twin screws and the centrifugals, that's not really as big of a deal. But when you go to a centrifugal, you are gonna, on the older style, not so much the newer ones, you are gonna have an oiling system. The twin screw and the roots are gonna be a pretty involved installation process. Now, when it comes to a turbo, the real big pro of a turbo is efficiency. Basically with a turbo, you can take a small displacement engine and get a lot more power out of it. So smaller, more efficient engine, and you're gonna make bigger power. It also helps with the corporate average fuel economy. Corporate average fuel economy is what automotive manufacturers, they take their miles per gallon, they add it up over all the vehicles they sell, and that's what they can put on the window sticker for that vehicle. By the automotive manufacturers having vehicles that are more efficient, get better fuel, you get to build vehicles that have factory superchargers on them. You get to build the fast stuff. You get to build the Trackhawks, the Hellcats, the GT500, all these cars that come factory with the blower. You get to build those because of the smaller 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder turbo cars here in the United States. And then another big thing about turbos is you don't have the parasitic loss. So it isn't really as much of an issue. They run off of exhaust gases. So your spin exhaust gas comes out of your turbo manifold or your turbo header, comes up, spins the turbo, the impeller side, which spins your compressor side, drawing in air, compressing the air, shooting it down to your engine. So you're not really losing that, 50 to 70 horsepower that you would with a blower. Downside of a turbo, they're a little bit more complicated. You have more you have to worry about oil lines. You have to worry about all the piping for your hot and cold side, especially if it's something you're building. It's all stuff you're gonna have to figure out. Another thing is that turbos work better within a specific range. A standard turbo, if you're not working with something like a VGT or a sequential turbo, you're gonna have lag. One issue with turbos is they work in a narrower range, whereas a supercharger works over the entire RPM range, especially down low to get you that grunt. A turbo is gonna need time to spool. So like an Evo, really doesn't get into boost from 25 to 3 grand, somewhere there's a really start pulling, and then they freight train like crazy. But between idle and that 25 to 3,000 RPM, they're kind of a dog. So, I mean, in the end, turbo or supercharger, they both have their place. It's really up to you. Do you want something that you're gonna daily every day, drive around in traffic, bumper to bumper, then maybe a supercharger is the way to go. If this is something where lag really isn't gonna be an issue for you and you're willing to deal with the added work in order to get all that extra power on the big end, maybe turbos are what you're after. Personally, I believe everybody should twin charge everything they own.